Hi, I'm Jo Marshall, founder of Culturise. 5 years ago, I moved out of the corporate world and started this business to really focus on how we support organisations, not just to develop their vision, values, purpose, and the behaviours that sit around them, but to truly focus on the practical implementation and embedding of the language and activities that create a fantastic culture. So today I'm going to share a brief presentation with you that might start conversation inside DHS around how do we align our futures, a modern approach to change through cyclic improvement. Here's the traditional approach. We all know it pretty well. We have our vision, our mission, our goals and our strategies, and we rely heavily on our leaders at the senior and mid-levels to take the messaging and take the activities that we agree on at the strategy sessions and ensure that they're embedded within our teams. Many organisations face enormous challenges in getting those messages delivered in a way that's aligned, in a way that's practical, and in a way that can be maintained in the face of a business as usual that is increasingly busy. The cycle of change approach that we take has us going through a cycle a number of times over a change program. Executives are able to prioritise which areas of change they'd like to focus on, and senior leaders and mid-level managers are supported in understanding how they can practically implement that change. So here's a snapshot of the cycle. We start by gathering information from our people, understanding how much they understand and how they see this change might play out. We take that feedback into the executive room and we work together to prioritise and co-design the activities for implementation. We then deliver these activities jointly, executive and Culturise together, to our senior leaders, and we tool them up with the practical activities and language that they can use in their teams, and we give them freedom to design and commit to how they're going to do it in the everyday working rhythms that are existing in their businesses already. We send them away to implement, armed with the tools and the backing support to call us if they need us. And then we bring them back together after a reasonable period to reflect on what they've implemented, what's gone well, what are they still finding challenging, what language is emerging from their teams. We call this reflection-based coaching. We offer them support. They learn a lot from each other in these sessions in terms of listening to their colleagues that they trust in what's worked well for them. We let them go away with a new set of actions to further enhance and improve the practical implementation that they're already working on. And over a particular period of time, we review their progress. And that particular period of time is something we design together with you. So what might that look like in real life? Well, it looks like the practice of practical micro chunks. We deliver each step of the change cycle in what we call micro-learning chunks, small, short workshops at both the executive level workshop, the senior level, and then we encourage senior and middle leaders to deliver in a similar way, small chunks, digestible, practical, and things that people can build upon by practicing and talking about often. An example, let's say we want to start with aligning our values. We work in the public service. We know we have 8 corporate values that we all aspire to. We start by interviewing briefly our teams on where they're at in understanding what values matter and how they interpret those values. We then gather that information and our executive might get together and choose 3 or 4 core values from that list that we feel really need a focus for the first cycle. We then input micro-learning activities to show our executive what we might share with their senior leaders in terms of tools that they can use to have conversations and get commitment and practice of habits around those 3 to 4 core values. We then have what we call our micro-learning handover workshops, where the executive and Culturise together share our micro-learning agreed activities with our senior leaders. We guide them in how they might implement them in their businesses, and they set plans for how that's going to happen, taking into account the idiosyncrasies and individual needs of each different business unit. We send them off to implement. It might be for a month or 2 months, and then we welcome them back in to what we call reflection and coaching sessions, where we'll invite them to share in a safe environment what's worked well for them, what's really challenged them. We invite them as colleagues to share advice and experience, and we drive them towards setting a new set of actions around how they'll go away and further support the learning and embedding of these activities within their teams. A month or 2 after that, we get back together and we'll view what does business as usual now look like? Is it where we want it to be, and what other actions can we now put into place as business as usual or as next steps? What priorities might we have? Let's say we're going to have 5 cycles or start off with 4 cycles. We might start around our habits of being. We talk about being as the behaviours that support the values of the organisation, and we talk about language and how common language can have an enormous impact on our way of being and how we all live out the values of the organisation. That cycle then leads us on to a habits of doing. How do we create routines of no surprises in the organisation? What are the checkpoints for which we all come prepared, and what are the questions that we're all brave enough and safe enough to answer in this organisation? Once we've got those 2 foundations, our 3rd cycle might be about deepening accountability and adaptability whilst growing engagement. A really interesting one I'd love to chat more about as part of this conversation. We strengthen our foundations and we need to ensure that we don't lose sight of wellness. So wellness as a performance driver could be a really interesting cycle to look at in terms of bringing together important activities around employee wellness and understanding how they are actually very closely linked to the drive and growth and performance of the organisation. It can be then good to dedicate a cycle to reflection and activities and practical reminders of what we've been through in the first 4 cycles, and to use that as a vehicle for our senior leaders and executives to set the pathway forward for continuous adaptability, growth and change. So that's the start of a conversation. Thanks for listening. We'd love to chat with you more, and there is so much more information we could gather to really refine this conversation into something that really makes a difference. Thanks for your time.